Hello, welcome back to Julie's Village. I'm glad you decided to join us. Today we're going to talk about school meetings and who you can expect to see there. If you would like more information about IFSP meetings or 18 to 21 program meetings, please feel free to request that in the comments. If you have a child who qualifies for services on an individualized education program or an IEP, you can expect to meet with the school team at least once a year. Whether they qualify for these services as a preschooler or as a senior in high school, the process is the same. I'm going to start with the very first meeting and explain that clear through the meetings that you will just have on a regular basis and maintain. The very first meeting is an evaluation referral, and often this is combined with a consent for assessment. These are the people who are required to be at the meeting. A parent or guardian is needed to be there. But I think it's important to note that in all meetings, if you are not able to attend in person, you can request to do some kind of online platform meeting or to do a phone conference. An administrator or an administrative designee also needs to be there. This might be the principal or a district representative or somebody that a school principal or a district representative has designated to be there and to speak for them. They know the laws and what is available well enough that they can speak for an administrator. A general education teacher is also needed. Best practice is if it's the child's own teacher because they know what the child looks like in the classroom. But things happen, illnesses or accidents, and sometimes your child's teacher isn't able to be there. The next best thing is to have a general education teacher from the same grade. They might not know your child as well, but they will at least know the content standards and will be able to speak to that in these meetings. Finally, a special education teacher is needed. In these meetings, the team will look at any evidence that's been gathered about concerns and needs that they see with your child. Or if you as a parent have called that meeting, you might bring any evidence or concerns that you have. The team will look at all of this evidence and these concerns and determine, do we need to do some additional testing? Is there something more extensive going on that we're not aware of that we just need to look into deeper? This is a list of people that you might see included in an evaluation referral and consent for assessment. Some of these people, as you're talking as a team, you might realize that you need in future meetings, even though they might not be present at your current meeting. As you're discussing concerns, you might see that there's need for speech or language pathologist. Just a little bit of a difference here. If you're considering speech, your concerns are with the way that words and sounds are formed in a child's mouth. Language is more of a concern with how they are applying, how they are speaking. They might speak clearly, but they might say things that are confusing, or they might be easily confused when instructions are given or as they're in conversations with others. Those are times when you would want to include a speech language pathologist. An occupational therapist would be invited if there are concerns with a couple of different things. You might include them if there are concerns with fine motor skills. So those are those small muscle movement things. That could include school tasks such as writing or being able to manipulate a book. It might also include some of those self-help skills like tying shoes, zipping jackets. If a child is behind their peers in these areas, you might include an occupational therapist. An occupational therapist may also be included for more of sensory needs. They are oftentimes our school experts on how to help students who need some kind of sensory support throughout their school day. A physical therapist would be included if there are concerns with some of those large muscles, those gross motor skills. So this would include things like being able to run without falling down, walking independently, being able to use the playground equipment, again, at an age-appropriate rate. If they're significantly behind their peers, for instance, going up and down stairs on the play equipment, that would be a time to consider including a physical therapist. A school psychologist is kind of on the fence. If this is an initial evaluation referral and consent for assessment, you definitely can expect to see a school psychologist in that meeting or know that they're going to be looped in. If this is an evaluation referral or a consent for a reassessment, your child has already qualified for special education, but you're coming up on either that 3-year mark or there's concerns by the team and they feel like they need to assess again. At that point, a school psychologist may or may not be included in the discussions, depending on the eligibility determination that was previously made. So why does your student qualify for these services? And also, will they need, are there additional tests that might be needed by the school psychologist? The school psychologist will often look at more global skills. So they will look at more of the cognitive skills of a child. They might also be the ones who look at more of like the social skills and the behavioral skills if those are a concern of the team. The school nurse would be included if there are any health factors that might be contributing to a child's success at school. School counselor is also a member that might be included if there are any kind of social or emotional concerns. Specialist teacher here in our state that I'm live in Idaho, and that is what we call our teachers who do anything outside of like the general curriculum. This is, for us, it includes PE, music, if there's any kind of like technology or computer labs at the elementary level. It could also include library or health classes. Those specialist teachers might be able to provide some information. For instance, if you have a child who struggles more in less structured environments, perhaps if, for instance, if behavior or social skills are a concern, they might not show up as much in the general education classroom if there is a much more structured and routined environment for your child, versus when they are in these classes that oftentimes will allow for more movement within the classroom and a little bit more interaction time with peers. We might see a breakdown in behavior or social skills in those environments, and it could be good to have the feedback of that specialist teacher. If a child is already qualified for special education services and there's a paraprofessional that works with your child more frequently that has some great insights or input to share with the team, they may also be included. I didn't mention it on the previous slide, but the other people on the team that will be doing any assessments are most likely the special education teacher. It's usually the special education teacher does any kind of academic assessments that need to be included. And then the general education teacher, their role in assessments typically is to provide feedback to other team members as they complete their assessments, and also just to share with the team in general how the child is doing within the general education classroom. That's why it's best if it can be the child's own classroom teacher, because they know best what your child looks like in class. As a parent, your role is also invaluable. You are the expert on your child overall. You know what things look like at home and out as you're doing things within the community. And you can share very valuable insight and any concerns that you have. And you also are usually the expert on any strengths that they have and their likes and dislikes. At this point, as the team considers all of the information that they already have, if they decide to move forward with any kind of assessing, and you're included in that team of if they decide, you have a voice and you can say if yes, you would like the assessments to happen or not. And you will need to provide a signature at that point if you agree to the assessments. The consent part of this meeting is the team should lay out for you what areas they would like to assess, and who is going to complete those assessments. And then if you agree with that plan, you would then provide your signature. It can happen that you might have the referral meeting and you might talk through where the concerns are, and the team might decide together what areas to assess. And then at a later time, a plan is created and sent home for you to sign. That is also an acceptable way to complete this process. Once you as a parent have signed that consent for assessment, that starts the clock. The team has 60 days to complete assessments and meet with you to review those assessments if this is an initial eligibility. If this is an eligibility reevaluation, the team has until the 3-year date. So as signature may be given, it's still best practice to keep it within those 60 days, but there isn't a legal tie to that. The team should do their due diligence to get that assessment completed as quickly as they can, but because of restrictions within the school and their schedules, they might not be able to get it done any sooner than that 60 days. And if there is an extended timeline because it's a reevaluation, they might need additional time to complete those assessments. Again, when you meet together to go over the results, you'll see a pattern in some similar people that need to be there. Parents and guardians, again, need to be there. But once again, you can either join in person or you can request to do some kind of virtual inclusion in the meeting, or you can request to do a phone conference and join on the phone. Again, the administrator or their admin designee that they've selected needs to be there. A general education teacher, best if it can be the child's general education teacher. And then the special education teacher. One thing I want to point out for general education teacher, again, over all meetings, if this is a middle school, junior high, or high school setting, it needs to be at least one general education teacher. Again, best practice would be if it's the general education teacher of the subject areas where the concern is most prevalent. There can be more than one general education teacher in that meeting as well, but sometimes, again, there are difficulties with being able to have somebody be able to cover that classroom teacher. So if you are in a middle school, junior high, or high school setting, you might not be able to have the entire team of general education teachers in there because there aren't enough adults to cover their classrooms. At this meeting, you can expect for each member of the team to go over any of the testing that they did. So from these members that are listed here, you would expect to hear from the special education teacher about any academic assessments that were completed. You can also expect to hear from the general education teacher if they have any observations to add. Once again, here's a list of other team members that you might expect to see based on what was determined when that consent for assessment was completed and that referral. If a speech language pathologist was included in that list, or if speech or language testing was included, you can expect to see the speech language pathologist at the meeting. One caveat to this is, again, sometimes things happen and people are not able to attend meetings due to illness or other situations. If that is the case, that team member should make arrangements to get that information to you at another time, and then you should be able to give permission for the meeting to go forward even without that person in attendance. So again, the speech language pathologist will go over any speech or language assessments that they completed. Occupational therapist, same thing, if they were included, physical therapist. And once again, if this is an initial eligibility, you should expect to see a school psychologist there. If this is an eligibility reevaluation, it would just depend on what assessments the team decided needed to be completed to determine if a school psychologist is needed or not at that meeting. Again, you might also see a school nurse, a school counselor, a specialist teacher, or a paraprofessional if they have some insight to share with the team. That brings us to our final two types of meetings, the IEP meeting or an IEP amendment. The IEP meeting is where you discuss the actual goals and accommodations and the plan for helping your student to be successful in the school setting. In this meeting, again, you can expect that you would be involved in the meeting, the administrator or their admin designee, the general education teacher, and the special education teacher. In this meeting, you'll discuss, based off of the testing that was completed, what services need to be provided. This meeting needs to be held within 30 days of an eligibility determination. So if your child is determined to be eligible for special education services on an individualized education program, then you would need to have, the team would need to organize a meeting within 30 days. Oftentimes, this meeting, just to cut down on the amount of meetings that you have, oftentimes the school team will just combine this with an eligibility meeting. The IEP should really be driven by that eligibility and what was found in that eligibility. So it is really natural transition one to the next to just have that discussion all at the same time. Again, the first thing that will be looked at is, what do we want this child to be able to do, your child to be able to do? Where are they currently at? Where are their peers at? So what are those content standard expectations at their grade level? And what needs to happen to help them make those next steps towards where their peers are at? And that will determine the goals. Based off of the testing, any areas of need, you can expect to see at least one goal for those areas of need. Sometimes one goal might hit multiple areas of need. And the special education teacher should explain that to you as you're discussing as a team. You'll also look at how will this instruction be provided? Will it happen in the general education setting? Will it happen in a specialized setting? Will it be a combination of both? Who will be providing those services? How many minutes each week or each day will these services be provided? And what will that look like a little bit? In addition, you as a team will discuss what are some reasonable accommodations that we need to make for your child to be able to access education, both in the special education setting and also in the general education setting. This might include classroom, it might include playground accommodations, it might include accommodations in those specialized classes, or even within the cafeteria or using restrooms. All of those things might be considered in this accommodations section. There should also be a discussion about what accommodations will be provided in testing. So classroom testing, and then also any statewide or district-wide testing that happens within your child's school. That should be discussed along with any accommodations needed there. You can also expect to discuss transportation and whether or not that is needed for your child, and also something called extended school year. Extended school year is not summer school. In this situation, there would be no new learning or new education provided. It's just looking at, is there a need for our child? Is there Do we see evidence that a long break over the summer would have a significant impact on their education and their ability to regain already learned skills? At this time, the team would either discuss, are we going to look at that now, or is this something that we need to collect more evidence on and look at later? So that would probably be a future conversation. Those are typically the main points that will be covered as you discuss your child's education plan. I've included on here an IEP amendment. An IEP amendment can take place as a full team in a meeting. And an amendment is just, do we need to make any changes? As we move forward with this IEP, are things working, or are there things that just need to be adjusted a little bit? You as a parent can request that an amendment be considered, and anybody on the school team could also request, hey, let's take a look at this. This isn't really working. Is there something else we need to do here? If you decide to meet as a team to go over that amendment, these are the required members to be there. If you decide as a team that, we don't really need to have a meeting over this, this is a pretty simple change, you can just make the change, and then you as a parent would need to sign off on that change. So a form will be sent home for you to sign, and then at least one person from the district will also need to sign, whether that's the principal, or again, the principal might appoint a designee to make that signature happen as well. Once again, here's a list of people that might be included in that IEP or IEP amendment meeting. If these people have any part of your child's IEP, it's reasonable to expect them to be at this meeting, whether they are there because they have specific goals in their area that they're going to work on, or if they are there just to consult. Once again, things happen and they might not be able to make the meeting. If that's the case, then they should make arrangements to share with you and with the team what services or goals or any part that they will have in the IEP will be in the IEP, and give you as a parent an opportunity to give feedback. Then once again, you can sign a form saying, yes, I have the information I need so we can go ahead and move forward with this meeting, or I have made arrangements to have a meeting or to connect with this service provider so that I can get the information I need and then continue with the meeting. So a speech language pathologist would be there if they have any goals in any type of communication services that they will be providing. Occupational therapists, again, if they're going to be providing any kind of support with those fine motor skills or those sensory skills, they would most likely be at this meeting explaining their part. Physical therapist. Now, school psychologist is actually very rare to see at an IEP meeting or an IEP amendment. If they have something specific to speak to, or if there's questions from any member of the team that goes above what just the required members of the team can answer, the school psychologist might be invited and they can attend and give that input. Your school nurse is most likely to be there if there's any kind of like personal care services. So if the school team is providing support with using the restroom or dressing or feeding, you might see the school nurse. Or if there are any medical concerns, that's another time that you would see the school nurse attending these meetings. School counselor, again, if there's social or emotional support that they have a role that they are providing, they would be at this meeting. Oftentimes, those social and emotional pieces can be covered by a special education teacher, so you won't always see a school counselor just because those supports are on the IEP, but you might. Again, specialist teacher, they're even more rare at these meetings as well, unless they, again, the team feels like, boy, they just have some important insight that the rest of us don't see. It would be great to have them there. And again, a paraprofessional, especially if there's one that works a significant amount of time with your child, they might have insight to provide to the team that would be difficult to be as presented as clearly as it could be from a paraprofessional. Thanks for joining us. If you have questions or topic suggestions that you would like to see covered in future videos, please write that in the comments. If any of this information was helpful to you today, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share this video with others so that more can benefit. Thank you so much. See you next time.